Today for this episode of Recollections, we're at the home of the Gatchells. Thank you for letting us look at your record collection.
Glad to have you. To begin, we'll start at the beginning. This is the first record I ever owned. It's the Nervous Breakdown EP by Black Flag. This is their first record from 1978. It's also the first release on SST Records, which is Greg Ginn, the guitar player for Black Flag. That was his label. And it ended up in the 80s being like the seminal indie record label. So in a lot of ways, this is the beginning. But it was, this is the first vinyl record I ever bought. And I guess in punk, that was like it's kind of an anomaly because like it was the only type of music, I guess, and even in the 90s and 2000s and like the dead era of vinyl that was still pumping out a ton of vinyl, so it was still like a relevant form, I guess. And I mean, of course this is a reissue, but the way I even heard about vinyl or started caring about it in the first place was like listening to punk rock and getting into Black Flag and bands like that. So then you get into all the punk bands and you start going to punk shows and buying other people's 7-inches. And so this one is the first EP by Cult Ritual. This is on Burrito Records, which is Bob Surin, who ran a record store called Sound Idea in Brandon, Florida for like a long time. This is his record label, and I guess these were all like shop kids that would hang out in his store and like buy punk records or whatever. He heard them and was kind of blown out of the water, which he had every right to be because they're an amazing band. And all these kids were like 16 and 17 for like this was a band for like 4 years. And I got to see him live one time down in Tampa, and it's absolutely amazing. There was one point where the singer, who was like, like a 17-year-old kid at the time, he threw the microphone on the floor and he just started screaming at the top of his lungs, like big barrel-chested, started screaming, and you could hear him like in the hall over all the amps, and it was so loud, and it like, I don't know, I'm getting goosebumps right now talking about it, but like, yeah, I remember being able to hear him in that whole thing and being like, what in the fuck is going on right now? It was amazing. But so yeah, that's this band. This is that show I was just telling you about. I bought this, which is their second EP. Well, no, it's their third EP at that show, and it was like super rare. It's on Drugged Conscience Records, but if you look, like this is it's that famous photo of the Manson girls with shaved heads, and the members of the band made the silk screens themselves and hand screen printed all these copies. And and like on there that says "Death to Pigs." It's like they're such a heavy band for being like little kids, They just have a bunch of like crazy, scary artwork. And they're a really great band. And then some other highlights of my records I got going to punk shows. This is like I don't know what you'd call it, maybe like a crusty grindcore band called Divisions, also from Tampa. But the cool thing about this 7-inch is the drummer for this band, this like brutal like grindcore band, is Carson from Merchandise, when he was like again probably like 18 or 19. So it's just funny because I saw this band twice down in Tampa, and it's just funny knowing now that like Carson is in Merchandise. So it's like the wide contrast between the two. And then what do we got? We got Giggle Giver, which is a local Valdosta band. Ian May, Matt Anderson, Joey Henley played drums on this one, but Ted Schubert was their final drummer before they it decomposed, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, this rules. Giggle Giver rules. Then we got Nazi Dust. I got this at a show in Tallahassee. This band is cool. And then finally, a bit of Narcissism. There's this record. This is a friend and I kind of put this record together in 2012, I think. And it's got 6 local Valdosta bands, like punk bands and hardcore bands and stuff. But yeah, like the record itself, it's like it's bad recording quality, and like, you know, the bands, I all love them, but they're probably never gonna get any national attention. But like, I kind of like remember this period in my life. It's like a 6-month period of like working with a few people in town, like trying to get this done. So this is, yeah, it's a nice keepsake that I like. So here's that. Okay, so the interlude before the final act. Any record collector worth their salt has some gimmicks in their collection, and these are some of my favorites that I have. To start with, it's not a 7-inch, but it's a 5-inch. It's a 4-band compilation. There are 8 songs on here, and it's a one-sided 5-inch of like hardcore bands. And yeah, it's Brody's Militia, Voetsek, Widespread Bloodshed, and well, yeah, so I guess just 3 bands. But I guess all these bands did a tour together in like 2007, and they decided to do kind of a gimmicky record for it. And it's all just like really harsh thrash, but it's gimmicky and it's cool, and I like it. Next, I found this at a thrift store like a long time ago, like 2008, I think. But it's a 7-inch copy of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. It's the same broadcast he did in the, I don't know if it was late 20s or early 30s, that kind of set the Northeast on fire, you know? I mean, I think everybody knows the story, but people heard this radio broadcast and thought the Martians were actually coming, and you know, some people actually even like killed themselves, and like people were forming militias and stuff. And yeah, it's an absolutely crazy story, like the power of media to influence people. But this is I think this record is from the 70s. It's just a, you know, a recreation of the broadcast. But yeah, it's cool. So I like that. Next, we got this beautiful face. This band is Corrosion of Conformity. They were a great punk band in the 80s, and in the 90s they just kind of turned into like bad 90s metal. So that's not terribly cool, but this is a cool record. A friend bought it for me, and the great thing is they do 3 songs on here, and one of them is I've Heard It Before, which is a Black Flag track from like 79. It's on their 6-pack EP, and they do a really good cover of it, like a really heavy cover of it. And then the last highlight from all of my kind of gimmicky records is the Run DMC Christmas EP. This was a Record Store Day release a few years ago, and the absolutely amazing thing about it is this. It's a Run DMC Christmas in Hollis postcard that you're supposed to send to a friend, but I'm not going to because I don't want to blow it, you know. But if you look close, it's an actual record, and you can actually play it. And the sound quality is horrible because they pressed the record on a piece of paper, so of course it's horrifying. But yeah, it's really cool because I've never seen that before. You know how like you'll be in a like Goodwill or whatever thrift store, and you see a record and you're like, it could be cool, it could be not. We'll see if it pays off. This is like the greatest example in my record collection of that really paying off. Rock and Roll Dance Party. It's a compilation on King Records from, it's not early-ish, but it's like 1956. in rock and roll, so when it was still like fresh as opposed to like in 1960, that era of rock and roll was like super played out. But anyways, it's still like it's amazing because it's just like you can tell this like had to be underground rock and roll of its day. Like it's dirty, the lyrics are dirty, it's like super sexual, and it's like this is when you like see all those like old 1950s like PSA type things about like rock and roll was melting the brains of teenagers. Like this is what they're talking about, and it's like it's the most amazing thing. And I had never heard of anybody on here except like on side one. I'd never heard of Little Willie John, but he does Fever. Like you give me fever, boom, 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 boom. And so that's the only thing I'd ever heard of. But the whole thing is so good, man. And it's like a more northern rhythm and blues based rock and roll than like the rockabilly thing of the 50s. So like a lot of saxophones, and there's like piano work, and it's it's like a lot of bass, really like sultry, and like I don't know, you can just imagine like a lot of like cigarettes and liquor and like late nights, you know what I mean? Like that's what it sounds like to me, and it's such a good record. And yeah, Rock and Roll Dance Party. If you ever see it, absolutely pick it up, even if you've never heard of any of the bands. But okay, so just a few good song names. Boogie at Midnight by Roy Brown. You know what the boogie is that they're talking about. Sexy Ways by the Midnighters. Just the fact that you have the word sex in a song from the 50s, like that is so perverse. Like that's heavy to me. And yeah, I don't know. It's great. It's a great record. So there it is. Keeping with the R-rated records, this band rules. They played a huge part in my teenage years, but they're Asshole Parade from Gainesville, Florida, and they this is their discography, and it's I don't know if it's a first pressing. I don't know the details of it, but this is hand screened. And that's a picture of Lorna Doom from the Germs. Like, the cool thing about Asshole Parade is they were able to, like, take punk and, like, praise it, but also be able to make fun of it, kind of, in a way. Like, they were very much, like, historians of punk, and also not slaves to the history of punk, you know? And that's always something you can respect with a band. And but yeah, the album's called Student Ghetto Violence, which is just a great 3-word phrase to ponder for a long time. Like, but yeah, so hand screened, just like Xeroxed lyric sheet, a free poster that's just Xeroxed artwork that I'd imagine one of their buddies did, and yeah, and then the No Idea P.O. box on there, hand stamped. Like it's just a cool record, and it was a good find. Next, we have I don't have all the Black Flag EPs, but as far as their 12 inches go, I have all but 2. Jealous Again. Damaged is in another pile. You'll hear about that later. But Everything Went Black. This was the first Black Flag record I heard. It was a moment for me, absolutely. And it's like, I don't know, like you have like those kind of pivotal moments that you can think back later on and be like, oh yeah, that was like kind of an important thing in my life. Like that was like the fork in the road, right? So I heard this and I took that road, and like it's been fucking great, and I've enjoyed it ever since. But that was this record. This was the first Black Flag I ever heard. And like the first song on there is Gimme 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 with Keith Morris on vocals, and like it cuts in with the drums, and it's just like this really sloppy drum beat, and it's not a good recording. And like I just remember being like, I was 14, and like I was riding skateboards, and I was like a grumpy 14-year-old whatever, but then like I heard that the first time and I was like, what the fuck is this? Because it doesn't sound like music. Like, it's so gritty and grainy and ugly that, I don't know, you don't, like, I didn't think something like that would exist, but then when I found out it did, I was like, alright, fuck yeah, I'm on board. Like, let's do this. What the fuck is this? Let's figure it out. And so that's that record for me. Then we have My War. I don't know, everybody hates on the later era Black Flag, but I'm a fan. So there's My War. There's The Process of Weeding Out. Their instrumental album, which people hate on also, but I really like it. Then Loosen Up. This is, to me, the best of the later Black Flag records. I don't know, it's like a good mix of like being heavy and like riff oriented, but without being like douchey metal stuff, I guess. And then this record I don't like. This is their last LP, came out right before they broke up, and I own it, but this is like kind of the one Black Flag album that it just doesn't work for me. So that's that. Let's move on. So this is Beastie Boys, Some Old Bullshit. I think this came out in the early 90s, but it's a 10-inch with, it's like all of their like early stuff when they were still a punk band. That's a Dot cameo. But yeah, so yeah, the Beastie Boys made 2 EPs as like just teenage punkers in New York before they kind of found hip hop and went in that route. But this is them as punker kids, and yeah, so it's a cool record. It's just a compilation of their first 2 EPs they had, and it's cool. Okay, the mandatory Beatles record that everybody has. This one is not the mono, so it's not a first press, but Sgt. Pepper's. Hello, and the cool thing is it still has all the cutouts. So it's got the paper dolls, the paper mustache, the lapel pins, and the army gear, whatever you call that, all still intact. So I thought that was really great.
Mommy.
Then we've got Gunner. So we've got Time Further Out by Dave Brubeck. Dave Brubeck rules so hard. And yeah, Time Further Out. My favorite song on here is Unsquare Dance. And it's got this like this clapping. It's like but it's in 3/4, and like I don't know if you're not familiar with him. He's like his hallmark in jazz was using non-4/4 time signatures, and it's, I don't know, kind of a big deal because before that nobody in popular music, like jazz being popular music back then, nobody did that. Which, but yeah, you'll hear more about Brubeck later. Here's another Brubeck record. This is one of his early ones. It's the Dave Brubeck Quartet, but before, or no, it says Brubeck Quartet featuring Paul Desmond before he was an established part of the quartet. The Dave Brubeck band, I guess, in its beginning, it was a trio. And they didn't have a saxophone player, but when Paul Desmond came into the mix, he really kind of solidified the lineup, I guess you could say. I mean, I don't know how jazz people would put it, but yeah, Paul Desmond kind of brought it all together. And the cool thing about this is it's on red vinyl. This record's from '54, I think. I'm sure there'll be like internet commenters that are like, it's 56, but I think it's 54. And but the cool thing is, like, so by the 1950s, jazz was kind of starting to wane in its popularity or importance or whatever. So jazz labels.
Dottie, come here. Come here, baby.
They started to like. They were like, what can we do to sell more jazz records? So they were like, all right, let's put all jazz records on red vinyl. And that was actually the first cases ever of, colored vinyl. So now every band has colored vinyl. But the reason that it was begun in the first place is because, jazz labels were trying to stay relevant and do something hip. And, yeah, so this is an example of that. Next we have Cult. To me, this was like the first record Trish and I kind of like had on heavy rotation where we could, where we were both like into it, Because before that I was like, hey babe, do you mind if I play Black Flag? And she'd be like, oh yeah, okay, fine, whatever. But this is the first one that she brought into the mix, and I was like, holy shit, this is really good. So, yeah, so that's what we did.
Hello.
Alright, these two, they go together, and there are a ton more in all the rest of the records, but we got The Clash, and then Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables by the Dead Kennedys. These two were given to me by my uncle, along with another thick stack of early punk records, all from back in the day. They're not all like first press, but so here's the story. When I was like 14 and just getting into punk, I had a Ramones t-shirt, and my family was having a cookout, so we go to the cookout, and I'm wearing my Ramones t-shirt, and my uncle said, hey, do you listen to that band? And I was like, yeah, do you know who this band is? He was like, do I know who this band is? And he, of course, was offended. And he was like, of course I know who this band is, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I can tell you a million things about records or whatever. And, doing what uncles do. And so, like, flash forward a year later, he heard that I'd gotten a record player. Like, my mom told him that. And he was like, well, I've got all these old records I don't listen to anymore. And so he just handed me this stack of records, and it's like the holy grail of punk records, like stuff people like hope to get for their collections. Like that's what I started off with. And these are just two examples of it. But yeah, like I said, neither of these are like first editions, which doesn't matter because like it's fucking rad, and there's like even like family history to it, which makes it even better. And yeah, and like the Minutemen, the Replacements, Black Flag, the first Sex Pistols album, like the starter kit. He just handed it to me one day, and it was like, oh, it was amazing, And okay, to continue, we got Paranoid by Black Sabbath. You can't listen to heavy music and not have a copy of this. It's an absolute masterpiece, and like forever, I was not into Black Sabbath because you hear War Pigs and Paranoid on the radio all the time, like on the rock stations, and it's just so yeah. Like my whole life, I was like, all right, whatever. This band's a bummer. They're boring. But then you get a little older, and I was like started to contextualize it and say like, you know what? These people invented that. Like so like. Maybe Guns N' Roses kind of sucks, but Black Sabbath invented like the heavy music sound. Like they were contemporaries. This record came out in 1970. Like the Beatles were still a band in 1970. So like you have the Beatles and then you have Black Sabbath. Like it's I don't know. It's so heavy and it's so weird that they.
Does that say $2?
Yeah.
We undersold that.
Yeah.
Early days.
Oh yeah, I got it from you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This was before I was even working there. But yeah, it's such a good record. Okay, this one. This is Cult Ritual again. This is the one LP they had. They hand screened all of this, and if you feel it, it's super gritty. It's just like cardboard and like acrylic paint. And there's the back cover, and the record is on like sewage water brown, and it comes with this cool poster. It's I don't know what it's like, the Virgin Mary or something. I don't know what she's doing. Gunner's trying to figure it out. But yeah, really dark stuff. And I know we talked about that band earlier, but yeah, they just like, they had like such a dark image. Like, it's commonplace for like death metal bands or whatever to have like dark imagery, and it's all crass and it's all played out. But they did dark imagery in like a kind of a new, exciting way. Like, it wasn't just like zombies and death and skulls, you know? But all of their artwork, like, they were really into like the Manson murders, and like they kind of took like all the dark imagery from America and like distilled it in a lot of their like artwork and stuff. But yeah, so Cult Ritual is rad. Next we have these two. JFA is another band from my youth that I have a great reverence for. I grew up like, so like punk rock was a big thing to me, but before that skateboarding was an even like bigger thing, and it still is. I still ride a skateboard, and JFA was like a huge, I don't know, influence. Maybe that sounds lame, but like, they were a skate rock band. They were like the first skate rock band, and they're famous for sending in letters to skateboard magazines when they were like first starting out, and they were like, here's the deal, we're in a band, we ride skateboards, anybody else that's in a band and ride skateboards, we challenge you, we'll drive to your city, we will outskate you and we will outplay you, let's do it. And nobody called them on their shit, but like that's how they kind of made a name for themselves, as people were like, who the fuck is this band that's like writing into all these skateboard magazines and saying like, we're here, you know? But yeah, this band rules, and like from like age 15 to age 20, like this band was like a big presence for me. This is their first LP. It's called Valley of the Yakes, which who knows what a yake is, but yeah, it's great. It's amazing. And if you look at all of this, when they made this LP, the singer, that's Brian Brannon. He was 14 years old. Their drummer Bam Bam was 14 years old, and these two dudes were the ancient ones at 18 years old apiece. So yeah, it's amazing. And this is another JFA album. This is their live 1984 tour. These guys put this out themselves on their own record label, and yeah, so it's just, you know, another cool punk document, like a reflection of that era, that people put out all their own records and just did their own fucking thing, and it's, I don't know, it's cool. It's like, it's very empowering to like to have this in your mind, and like you're like, alright, well, people can just do shit, so I can just do shit, you know what I mean? Like, if you want something done, you do it. And that's, yeah, that's cool. And that's what that band reminds me of. Here we have Wanda Jackson. So, growing up, my mom was really into country music, but she had decent taste in country music, and she wasn't into Wanda Jackson, but like, I remember as a kid, like, I feel like there's a wave of like country ladies from the 50s and 60s having resurgences in the 2000s, and so like I remember being a teenager and my mom listening to like Loretta Lynn's, I forget the name of the album, but like it was the one that Jack White produced, and then like Johnny Cash's wife, June Carter, she came out with a record right before she died called Wildwood Flower, and like my mom had that on heavy rotation, so I always like had that in my head as a kid, and I was like, all right, whatever, mom. That's like mom music, you know. But then when I heard this Wanda Jackson record, it kind of reminded me of that, and she rules. And this is another one that Jack White produced, and she does like, it's so cool because like she stays relevant, and she does an Amy Winehouse cover, and like she does a couple of old standards, but she has some originals too, and it's a great record. And then, alright, let's go through it. Lightning Bolt, they rule. Just listen to them. I'm not going to explain it. Like, you got to listen to it. Figure it out for yourself. Next, we have Ninja Gun. They're a band from Valdosta. They rule super hard. You can't be from Valdosta and not love this band, so I do. I think they're all fucking geniuses in their own right, and I kind of don't want them to hear that because maybe it would feed their heads. But yeah, they're great. Dot loves Lightning Bolt also. Then we got White Long. This is one I got at a show. I saw them. They're like a big deal now, but when I got this record, it was their first tour outside of Canada, and me and my buddy Tyler went to go see him, and they played for like maybe 20 people in Gainesville, and ooh.
You handle that?
You can get that if you wanna film that. Tom Waits' Blood Money. This is an amazing album. So I got this in October a few years ago, so like always in my head, it just reminds me of Halloween, and it's always on heavy rotation around Halloween in our house. And it has a wonderful Halloween vibe. It's like super dark, and it's Tom Waitsy, but he does a lot of like, it's not a xylophone, but like wood. I don't know, is a wood xylophone still a xylophone? I don't know, but there's a lot of that in there, and it's really like the whole album just sounds like a Broadway production of I don't know, some kind of like horror movie, and it's like there are a lot of like, it just sounds like percussion like tinkling on a skeleton, you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes a bit of sense to anybody, but just listen to it and you'll get what I'm saying. It's such a good record. His subject matter is so dark. He's like, there's a lyric where he says, like, all the good in the world you can fit inside a thimble and still have room for you and me. And that's basically like every bit of lyrical content for the whole record. Yeah, it's just dark, and it's good, and it's a great Halloween record. So this October, give this a sales bump, and yeah, go buy it 16 years after the fact. Okay, this is Hold That Tiger by Sonic Youth. Sonic Youth in the late 80s and early 90s, they had like a short-lived fanzine they did for their fans about them, so it's like a kind of a narcissistic version of a fanzine. Like, it was about Sonic Youth and their contemporaries that they would send out to their fan club. And this was a release that was done as a part of their fanzine, so everybody that was on the mailing list that was a member of the fan club got a copy of this. Or I don't know how many people, but there were 1,000 copies made of this. I don't know how many people were in the fan club. But yeah, so that's where this comes from. It's a live set from 1987, I think. Yeah, October of 87. It's when they were writing all the stuff for Sister. So there's only a few songs from Sister on here, but like basically their catalog before that is in their live set, and it's so good. And yeah, and the best part is at the very end, like everybody in the audience is like so stoked, and they're asking for an encore. So Sonic Youth comes out, and Lee Ronaldo, he's like, he says, encores are really fucked up, but we're gonna do one anyways. And then they just play a ton of Ramones songs for like the last 10 minutes, and it's so good. Like, but yeah. Yeah, thank you. Is this your favorite one? And we're back. Okay, so to finish up real quick, here are the top 5 records that I have in my collection. To start with, Damaged by Black Flag. We got Henry Rollins. We got Fake Blood. An Edward Culver Photograph. So, and the cool thing about this record, it is first press, and you know that because as a parent, I found it an anti-parent record. That's a quote from MCA's CEO, I guess. This record was like super extreme for its time. It was like the heaviest record. This is like pre-Slayer, pre-Metallica. This is the heaviest record that ever existed in 1981 and before. So yeah, basically MCA backed out of the deal. Black Flag said, screw it, we'll just put a funny sticker over the spot on the record. Apparently right underneath there it says MCA Records. But yeah, that's this record. It's super great. It's like the soundtrack to like teen angst. So get about it if you're an angsty teen. Next we have Time Out, the Dave Brubeck Quartet. Really killer artwork on the front, of course. The whole album's incredible. This was like a big deal for me because the first time I ever heard it, it was like, you know, you read the back and you find out that all of these are in strange time signatures. And I didn't know that that was a possibility to play outside of 4/4 time at the time. So then like me and all my buddies, I was like, you have to listen to this record, and then we have to figure out how to play in like 5/4 and 7/8 and, you know, 3/4 time. And so this was like the beginning of a fun phase in my life trying to figure out how to do this stuff. Next, Still Nothing Moves You by Ceremony. They're an absolutely incredible band. They're like the heaviest you can possibly get without turning into like metal douchebaggery. And still very like expressive and just smart music. And it's on pink vinyl. Oh, and I got this at a show a few years ago where the singer, Ross, who's like my Morrissey, he's like my main crush, says, "To Bo, the babe, forever, love Ross." So I'm blushing a little. Next, Double Negative, The Wonderful and Frightening World of Double Negative. This album is so fucking great. This band's from Raleigh. They're all like 40-year-old dudes, and the story is they just were like all bored with middle age, and they're like, hey, let's start a band. Like, we used to play in bands back when we were teenagers, and they did. And it's, I mean, to me it's like the best, it might be like the best punk record to me of all time. And it's something that came out in like, it came out in 2007, I think. And yeah, like all of the great punk records came out in the 70s and 80s, but to me this is on the list, and it's from 2008. So it's just, it's so heavy and it's so good. So if you're about any of that, then this is a record for you. Finally, last record, Daydream Nation by Sonic Youth. I remember the first time I heard this, I was just fucking blown away. Like, I remember I got this because my sister and I were into Nirvana. We heard that Kurt Cobain was super into Sonic Youth. So we got this at Best Buy, split the cost, took it home, and it was a rainy day. And I just remember listening to this, laying on my bed, in this like dark room on a rainy day. And it was just the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. And it was like, it's equal parts like chaos and beauty, and like they really found a way to like, I don't know, they perfected their craft over their first like 5 records or 6 or whatever, how many it is. And this is their masterpiece. This is the deluxe edition, but it's fucking beautiful. So buy it. And yeah, that's it. Daydream Nation, greatest record of all time for me.
And while I do enjoy quite a bit of Bo's records as well, these are my top 2, and they speak for themselves.
Do me a favor. Can you help me? Can you take this record to Jess?